Let's find Timmy. The first task to do for player is to start exploring the peninsula and continue the storyline. Upon completing the game, player will unlock creative mode which allow them to continue playing using the same save file. The peninsula that is setting of the game has underground cave system and the large mountains located in the northern location, similar to Canada. Underground, there are bodies of Christian missionaries that only can be accessed with the rebreather. Player can find an obsidian door to resemble an obelisk, which contain ancient power and the remaining corpse of cannibals nearby. Resurrection obelisks are used to create deformed mutants, which already exist before the arrival of the missionaries. Around the late 19th or early century, many Christian missionaries who were like Roman Catholics came to the peninsula. In an abandoned camp in a cave 1, Latin paper was found surrounded by the old objects. The Virginia sketch found showed the distinguished feature of the missionaries with the Bibles and crosses, as well as mummified corpse praying. This discovery indicates that they may have experienced the sudden disaster. The Latin paper also mentioned an encounter with a four-legged woman that likely refers to Virginia, suggesting the mutants were already present on the peninsula at the time and pointing to the artifact as the cause of the mutant appearance. Sahara Therapeutics conduct experiments on eternal life and resurrection by purchasing the peninsula, where they built offices and a complex research laboratory. Project Jarius was originally marketed as a program to cure terminally ill children, with the test subjects being children whose parents volunteered them to participate in clinical trials. But Dr. Matthew Cross allegedly conducted unethical experiments with artifacts to bring the children back to life and sacrifice living children, thus creating a cycle of sacrifice. After the process, the revived children develop a strange genetic mutation. Which were then studied for application in the field of cloning and adult longevity. However, the situation in the lab descended into chaos when an RMC managed to escape, which sparked an uprising among the residents consisting of the cannibals and mutants. As a result, almost an entire human population perished. The discovery of the Dr. Cross head at the end of the game led to speculation that he may have been killed by his daughter. In Cave 3, a newspaper clipping titled "Brother Still Missing" can be found. The milk box on the cruise ship depicts Zachary, another missing child for whom it is thought that the Sahara took children for experiment, while the laboratory was still functioning or using the resurrection obelisk. Christian missionaries attempt to locate the missing brothers by the boat, using clues and maps. Through the jungles, there are many camps abandoned by the various groups. Some of the identified groups included cave divers, climbers or cavers, hikers, and the film crews. The dive camps are located deep inside the cave and can only be accessed with the breathing apparatus. Meanwhile, cave climbers have tents in the dry area of the cave and on the walls of the canoe. The climbers spread out on the top of the jungle with their sleeping bags and tents. The film crew has a larger camp with the modern tents and film equipment, as well as the script for the program Survivor found around the site. Interestingly, all of these groups seem to have visited the jungle at the different times, and none have survived as all have become the cannibals. suggesting there is an element of mystery and danger in this jungle. The cruise ship crashed on the western side of the peninsula in the small bay around 1984 or later, with the cruise ship magazine dated to that year. Matthew Cross seems to have had some connection to or lived temporarily on the ship. There are some drawings made by his daughter there. The sequence of events involving Matthew Cross is unclear and can give a different picture of his character. Before the laboratory crash, Matthew worked at Sahara Therapeutics as the head of Project Jarius, where he researched resurrection obelisks. He has knowledge of power obelisks that can bring down planes, which suggests that he might bring down the plane on which the players start the game. To get the surviving child in a hope of reviving his daughter, Matthew had a wife named Jessica, who divorced him and filed a restraining order. The warrant was issued 3 months before the death of his daughter, Megan. The restraining order prohibited Matthew from having any contact with Jessica and his daughter. Matthew was fired from the lab for unethical use of equipment, possibly related to experiment on the Resurrection Monument. In the state of isolation on the peninsula, he decided to use an obelisk of power to bring down a plane in order to steal the living child Timmy. To bring his daughter back to life, Matthew's appearance as a red man after the plane crash suggested that red paint served as protection from cannibals. Eric LeBlanc is a character you play with a survival skill who is quite adept at sheltering and hunting in the short time after the plane crash with only a handheld axe and an outdoor survival book. It looks like Eric LeBlanc is TV survivalist, judging by the magazine cover which also states that his wife is dead. Timmy is his son. The plane crash is thought to have originated in New York, destined for Germany, given that the label resembles of the Lufthansa Airlines logo on board the plane were many tennis players carrying the balls and rackets. The crash occurred after the plane experienced several turbulence and a sudden engine failures. After the incident, only Timmy, a flight attendant who died, and Dr. Matthew Cross, the man in the red, were seen at the scene. This suggested that all the other passengers who died might have been taken by the cannibals. Although the rear of the plane was intact, many of the other passengers seemed to have fled after the flight attendant's death. Their scattered location on the peninsula suggests that some of them maybe survived for a few days before falling prey to the cannibals. Players explore the peninsula and find a vault at the bottom of the sinkhole that can be opened with a keycard. This card takes the player to a research lab where the player finds a resurrection obelisk containing a dead Timmy. The obelisk asks for the sacrifice when Timmy is connected to operation table, and the player realizes that Matthew has kidnapped Timmy to bring Megan back to life. The player quest continues to find Megan, where they find many pictures of her childhood that resemble Timmy. The player also finds a dead Matthew Cross with the crayons in his eyes, and Megan's drawings show that he sees her father as a monster, which might be the reason she killed him. When Megan was found, she exhibited strange behavior and eventually turned into the boss mutant resembling Virginia. After defeating Megan, the player takes her corpse back to the artifact. But realize that life sacrifice is required, and you must find a new card in the Megan's body that allows them to access the second artifact, which has the power to bring down airplanes using an EMP. You are faced with the choice to use the power or let the planes pass safely. After a plane dropping even, the story continues 1 year later with you and your son hosting a talk show. In the show, they completely friendly trick castings contest with the Doran, the host. There is an assumption that the player committed a similar act to Matthew, which was to kidnap a child and resurrect his son. In the cutscene, Timmy is seen experiencing violence, tremors, and seizures, signaling his possibility of the same mutation as Megan. Despite his predicament, the other characters try to comfort Timmy, and his seizures suddenly stop and he smiles at his father.
Is he okay?
The story continues with the perspective of now adult Timmy. Living in the small apartment, he sees a map of an unknown island on his bulletin board, which may relate to the future plot. The story ends with a climax as Timmy has another seizure, before he walks to the window and looks out over the city. This signal has end of canonically story in the game, official sequel, Sons of the Forest. In alternate ending, if he chooses to turn off the device, he will leave Timmy behind and return to the island with the possibility of being rescued, albeit without Timmy. The game will return to normal with a pacification mode and horde mode unlocked through the secret artifact, as well as the addition of the 5 new decoration. Enemy will be at maximum attack after beating the game.